Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another episode of Chess Chat, a program brought to you live from the Rollstone Bank and Trust studios at Fitchburg Access Television. I am George Marajanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. This club, the second oldest chess club in Massachusetts, meets every Wednesday evening from 6:30 to 10:30 in rooms 163 and 165 of the McKay complex at the university. And with me for this 200th episode of Chess Chat is our award-winning director, Darren Dame of Fitchburg, recipient of FATV's prestigious Boulder Award in 2009, and now in his 19th consecutive year as director of Chess Chat. And assisting Darren in the control room is a fellow resident and longtime Wachusett Chess Club member, Brian Bigelow, who also works the camera on our set. And sitting across from me is my longtime associate, trusty colleague, a chess author, a chess photographer, the Wachusett Chess Club statistician, my co-host, Dave Kuchar of Westminster. Hello, Dave.
Hello, George, and congratulations on the 200th episode.
Well, I congratulate you for being my co-host, my trusty colleague and associate for all these years.
Mm-hmm.
And
Happy to do it.
I thank you for being with me for all these times. Now, this 200th episode we're doing today is actually on a sad note because we are paying tribute to one of the top chess players in the latter half of the 20th century who passed away early last month. It was January 5th, 2025, that German Grandmaster Robert Huebner passed away at the age of 76 in Cologne, Germany. And he definitely was one of the top players, a world championship contender several times in the latter half of the 20th century. And I'm going to refer to my notes because there's so much. There's so much to refer and talk about Robert Huebner. Again, he was born November 6, 1948, in Cologne, which Germans know is Köln. In Germany, the city Cologne, one of the largest cities.
I didn't realize it. So
it's Köln. Yeah.
K-O-L-N?
K-O umlaut on the O, L-N, Köln.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what the city is actually called in German, is Köln. But it's been anglicized. We know it is the anglicized version of Cologne. Okay. Yeah. Again, a very big city, and that's where Robert Huebner was born. And his father taught him, when he was 5 years old, his father taught him chess. And he joined a chess club. He didn't join a chess club until he was 9 years old. Okay? And then 4 years later, at the age of 13, he actually won the German Junior Championship. And that's quite an accomplishment. To play in his first tournament at 9 and then 4 years later be the West German Junior Champion. Okay? And then in 1967, that was a year after I left Germany. I went to Germany in 1960. I went to live and study there in 1965. The fall of 1965, I came back Christmas Eve to 1966. But the following year, Huebner actually tied for first in the German championship. With a FEB master, only a FEB master named Hans Besser, who was older than him, and he just, by the way, he died about 20 some odd years ago, at a young age, Hans Besser. But that was the only time that Robert Huebner won the West German, co-shared the West German championship, was in the year 1967. Okay.
It's the only time he won it?
It's the only time he won it. He never. That was the only time he won the West German Championship. He never competed.
Oh, he didn't compete.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, he just chose that year. But here's what happened. Between 1971, now, what he did, he played in 1970. Okay, this is 3 years after he shared first place in the West German Championship with FIDE master Hans Besser. He played in an interzonal tournament. Now, what is an interzonal tournament? It's a qualifying event for the World Championship. It's actually, it is a tournament to decide who qualifies to play matches, what they call candidate matches, to find a challenger for the world champion. Now, who was the world champion? Who won the world championship in 1969?
In 69?
In 69.
No, it was Spassky, right?
Spassky,
yeah.
Exactly. Boris Spassky defeated Tigran Petrosyan in 1969, become the world champion, both from the Soviet Union.
Right.
But Spassky won it in 1969. So in 1970, the World Chess Federation held an interzonal tournament in Palma de Mallorca, Spain.
Okay.
This was a 24-player round-robin tournament.
That's amazing.
And by the way, this was the last interzonal, this qualifying tournament, was the last interzonal held as a one-section round-robin. They went to a different format, multiple section, but this one in 1970 in Palma de Mallorca was 24 players. So that was a long event. What was the date of that? That went from November 9th to December 12th, 1970 in Palma de Mallorca. Okay. So now, you know who won that? Now, of the 24 players, there were 3 Americans. The Americans who played, you had Bobby Fischer, the number 1 player in the country, in our country, and then you had actually Sammy Reshevsky, a multi-time U.S. champion, and we had another player by the name of William Bill Addison. Okay. Now, something interesting about William Bill Addison, he came to Fitchburg 3 months after Fischer did in 1964. Remember, in 1964, on March 2nd, Bobby Fischer came to Fitchburg and performed a 56-board simultaneous exhibition at the First Parish Unitarian Church at the Upper Common in the city. And 3 months after that, Bill Addison, who lives in San Francisco, came clearly across the country and played in the 4th Central New England Open, which is a very popular tournament. He came and won it. He came in June of 1964 and won the tournament here in Fitchburg. So we had 2 Americans playing in the Palma de Mallorca interzonal who actually played in Fitchburg 6 years earlier than their participation in the Palma de Mallorca interzonal. Now Fischer won the interzonal, and he won it with a big lead over the other participants. He scored out of 23 games. Do you know how many points he scored out of 23? You had to guess.
17 and a half, I think.
You're close. 18 and a half. 18 and a half points out of 23 games he played. He finished clear first.
But there wasn't anything really special about first, right? It was the top 6 got to go on to the candidates?
Exactly. Right. The top 6 finishers in the Palma de Mallorca interzonal qualified as become candidates, and they go into playing matches to see who would actually eventually end up being the challenger to Spassky. Now Fischer with 18 and a half. Now 3 players tied for 2nd to 4th, and that included Bent Larsen of Denmark, Yefim Geller of the Soviet Union, and Robert Huebner of West Germany. So those 3. And then, so we have Fischer, Larsen, Geller, Huebner. So we need 2 more people, 2 more players, and they happen to be Mark Taimanov of the Soviet Union, who, by the way, who is a professional pianist. There are, in fact, if our viewers were to Google his name, Mark Taimanov, Taimanov, they might find some YouTube videos of him performing on the piano. And so he tied, Mark Taimanov tied with Wolfgang Ullmann of East Germany. Remember, back then, we had East Germany and West Germany. Yep. So those are the 6 players: Fischer, Larsen, Geller, Huebner, Taimanov, and Ullmann. All right, so they play off in matches. So in the quarterfinals, you had Fischer playing Taimanov. You know what the score of that quarterfinal match was?
Right, it was famous. It was 6-0.
That was 6-0. The Fischer wiped out Taimanov, you know. And
so it's pretty much unheard of.
Unheard of. To win a quarterfinal candidates match by a score of 6-0
against a top-level grandmaster.
Yes, right, like Mark Taimanov. Now, Larsen was pitted against Ullmann, and he beat Ullmann 5.5 to 3.5. And Geller played actually someone who was seated in, Victor Korchnoi.
Okay.
And Korchnoi defeated Geller by the same score, 5.5, 3.5.
Yep.
And that left actually Huebner to play Petrosyan. Petrosyan in the quarterfinal. So you know what happened in that quarterfinal match that Huebner played against Petrosyan? The first 6 games were drawn. They played, by the way, they played in Seville, Spain. Seville, Spain. And the first 6 games of that quarterfinal match were drawn.
Okay.
Game 7, Huebner actually loses Game 7.
Okay.
Loses 7. And then he actually requests a change of playing venue. They were playing actually downstairs in this place, a very busy part of Seville, where you could actually hear the people walking on the sidewalk. There was noise.
Okay.
Yep. It actually affected. That's where he claimed that he was affected by the noise. He could hear the sound of feet on the pavement above him. Okay. Plus, no doubt, probably traffic of the cars also.
Right.
So they did nothing about changing the venue. So he said, "I'm quitting this match.
Wow.
I'm dropping out." Yeah.
But he did request a change.
He did request a change of venue from the downstairs. This was an area, a very busy thoroughfare where they were playing, and actually he claimed they threatened him with some repercussions. If they said, you can't do that. We're not changing the site. We're staying right here.
Yeah.
So he dropped out. Yeah. So
who was he playing against?
He's playing Petrosyan.
Oh.
Now he was affected again. Huebner was affected by the noise.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to play on. Even though he's down a point. Remember, he lost Game 7. Right. First 6 games are drawn. He loses. So he said, I'm leaving. Yep. I'm going home. Yeah, I'm not sticking around. So.
But you told me something about, was it Petrosyan?
Yeah.
His solution to that?
Yes, Petrosyan was not bothered by it. You know why? He was not bothered by the noise? He was hard of hearing. He just turned off his hearing aid. He no doubt, he was aware there was noise, but he says, hey, I'll fix this problem.
Yeah.
I'll just shut off my hearing aid. Yeah. And that's why he had no problem with the noise. Yeah. But unfortunately, so that ended Huebner's chances as far as being a contender for the World Championship. Yeah. To play Spassky. He lost against Petrosyan. Yeah. Okay. And of course, Fischer went on to beat, after he beat Taimanov 6-0, he faced Bent Larsen in the semifinals and beat him by what score?
6-0.
6-0.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. He wiped him out. But then in the finals, he faced Petrosyan.
Right.
And in the finals against Petrosyan, he beat Petrosyan, not by 6-0.
Right.
Yeah, that would be phenomenal. Right. Beating Tigran Petrosyan, who was world champion from 1963 to 1960. No, you don't beat a Tigran Petrosyan 6-0. Yeah. But the score was impressive, though. He did beat Petrosyan 6.5 to 2.5 in the finals.
And he only lost 1 game, right? Fischer only lost one.
Right. Fischer actually lost. Petro lost game 2. Fischer lost only game 2, and he won games 1, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and games 3, 4, and 5 were drawn. So, and that, of course, that paved the way for him to play Boris Spassky in 1972 in Reykjavik, Iceland. Okay. Okay. Now back to Huebner. Rupert Huebner actually had another chance as far as being a contender, because in the next interzonal, which he played in Rio de Janeiro in 1979, he qualified, being among the top 6, and he was able, after beating, he played the quarterfinals and semifinals. He beat 2 Hungarians, Andras Adorjan and Lajos Portis. So he got to the final. He's got actually now getting to the finals against Viktor Korchnoi. He got to the finals against Viktor Korchnoi. Now I want to read to you a clipping that I've been holding on to for 40 years, at least 40 years. And I'm going to read it so our viewers actually hear what is written. I have no idea who wrote this article. It appeared in some newspaper. Again, I'm a saver. I'm a collector. And it refers to Huebner as the lone wolf. That's in this article about Huebner. It said, this is now, again, regarding the interzonal 1979 Rio de Janeiro, it says, for the first time in 72 years, a German chess player has reached the finals of the Champions Tournament. The 31-year-old classical scholar, by the way, actually, Huebner was a classical scholar. He actually studied at the University of Cologne. He studied Latin and Greek and ancient history. He has a doctorate. He had a doctorate in the classics. And you know what his actually profession was? I mean, besides being a grandmaster, he was papyrist. What is a papyrus? A papyrus is one who actually deciphers papyrus. In fact, I'll read. Let me continue with the article. I go off on a tangent, which is very difficult. So, anyways, it says that 31-year-old classical scholar and grandmaster Dr. Robert Huebner, after his defeat of the Hungarian Lajos Portis, now meets 49-year-old immigrant from the Soviet Union, Viktor Korchnoi. This is the finals now of the candidates matches. Whoever wins this match then goes on to meet the world champion at the present moment. No, I'm sorry. This is Anatoly Karpov. This goes back to 1970. I got it wrong. Okay. It was 1975. Yeah. Karpov actually became world champion in 1975. Right. Yeah. So yeah, right. Karpov. Yes, right. So Karpov was the champion, right, in 1975. Right. Again, this was in 1979. Okay. Karpov was still world champion. It wasn't Spassky. It was actually Karpov was world champion. Anyways, no one has any doubts about the Cologne chess player's ability, but about the strength of his nerves. They're not concerned about his ability as a chess player, but they're concerned about his nerves. Before a contest, this lone wolf, they labeled him a lone wolf. Before a contest, this lone wolf, who in his own words has, and this is in quotes now, an unnecessary fear of other people. So Huebner, evidently in an interview with someone, said, I'm fearful of other people. Who, in his own words, has an unnecessary fear of other people, retires to his one-room flat in Cologne without television, newspapers, and telephone. He talks to no one. That's the life he lives. Wow. He talks to no one, and the slightest noise in the tournament hall disturbs him. I mean, would disturb him. When it gets too loud, he gives up. So it cited actually what happened to him when he gave up against Petrosian. The noise bothered him. And it says, Robert Huebner, who even as a 5-year-old is said to have checkmated his father. Even his father taught him at 5, but he learned how to checkmate his father when he was taught the game. He has mastered 8 languages. So besides Latin, Greek, and of course knowing German and English, he knew other languages. He knew a total of 8. He mastered 8 languages. Yeah, and only recently did he finish deciphering Greek papyri. In the meantime, however, he is devoting himself completely to the aim of becoming world champion. But it didn't happen. He did not succeed in his second try to be a world contender. Yeah. Now, he won again, though. He did qualify again in 1983. Yeah. And he got to play. He got to play Vasily Smyslov. Now, this match, this candidates match, was played in Felden, Austria. All right. So in his match against Vasily Smyslov of the Soviet Union, who was actually a one-time world champion because he beat Mikhail Botvinnik, and he held it for a short time. Yeah. The first 6 games of that, I believe, if I'm correct, the first 6 games of that match were drawn, and then there was actually I probably got it wrong here. What happened was, the first 7 games were drawn.
Brian's giving us the signal to.
Yeah, okay, we'll get along.
Okay.
First 7 games were drawn. Yeah. Then they went to 4 additional games, and they was tied 7-7. Then they went. I'm sorry. The first 10 games would draw.
Draws.
No, it was tied. No, it was 5-5.
5-5. Okay.
After 10, there's so much. I have so much on my mind here. The first 10 games they were tied 5-5.
5-5.
Then they played 4 games, and they were all draws. And you know what they decided to break the tie?
I do.
How did they decide to break the tie?
With the roulette wheel.
They went to a casino. There was a casino very close by. Yeah. They went to a casino, and they decided to let the roulette wheel decide, which is unheard of, to have a roulette wheel, the ball, roulette wheel. Yeah. If the ball landed on red, Smyslov would win. Yeah. So they did. They let the roulette wheel roll. It landed on 0, so they had to do it again. They rolled the ball again, and guess what happened? The croupier said, "Trois rouge," red 3, number 3, and Smyslov won the tiebreak on the roulette wheel. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, we're going to get to the Palma de Mallorca. We're going to present to our viewers a highly interesting game that Bobby Fischer, who won the Palma de Mallorca into Zonal 1, in round 1 of the Palma de Mallorca into Zonal, Bobby Fischer faced Robert Huebner. Yeah. And that's the game we're going to present to our viewers on this 200th episode of Chess Chat. So in the game, Bobby Fischer had white. What did he play against Robert Huebner in this round 1 game?
Of course, he played E4 because he always played E4.
Always played E4.
Yep.
Okay. Although actually in his match against Spassky,
played C4 once.
He played one time. He played C4, but he's never played D4. You'll never find a Bobby Fischer game with D4. All right. Now, how did Huebner respond to E4? He played the pawn to C6. Now, what is this? What is this characteristic of? What defense are we playing here?
Caro-Kann.
This is known as the Caro-Kann defense. Now, what is normally played by white on the second move against C6?
Almost always D4 is played because, as we said, many times, if your opponent allows you to take both central squares, you should do it. But Fischer didn't play that.
So if Fischer not playing D4, what did he play then?
He played D3.
Now, this actually is, I see the light square bishop is being shut in right now by that pawn on D3. Yep. So this must have come as a surprise to Huebner. I'm sure Huebner was expecting D4.
Right.
Okay.
So that apparently was the intent, is to just get him out of his preparation.
Yes. No doubt that's what Fischer planned on. I mean, he's not going to allow him to play his Caro-Kann defense. Right. So here is what Huebner played. He just carries out what normally would be played. Even if D4 were played, he would still play D5. And that's what Huebner played on move 2.
Yep.
Okay. It is now, and now, by the way, is black threatening something here by playing d5 now here?
Sure, he's just threatening to exchange pawns
Yeah.
and then capture the queen.
Forcing the queen,
Forcing
king to king.
To recapture
And forfeiting castling.
Forfeiting castling.
Okay.
Yep.
So Fischer can't allow that. So what does he do on move 3?
So he defends the pawn on e4 with knight to d2.
Right. Okay. So knight d2. All right. So what Huebner decides to do is play g6. Okay. That's his move. It's very clear what he plans to do as far as with his dark square bishop.
Right. Yep.
To fianchetto that bishop.
Yep.
All right. It's now Fischer's 4th move. What does he do?
Plays knight on g to f3. Simple development.
Okay, so he already has 2 pieces developed.
Yep.
And of course, Huebner has not developed a single piece yet.
Right.
Okay. But now he actually carries out the fianchetto of the bishop, bishop g7. Okay. It is now Fischer's 5th move. What does he do? Remember, he's got that poor light square bishop shut in.
Shut in, so he's going to fianchetto his bishop also.
Okay. So
Now,
g3.
now, didn't you say that this is basically the King's Indian attack?
This is known actually as the King's Indian attack. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, this is the name that most players would know it by. Yeah. But it arose from the Karo Khan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. So after g3, what Huebner played was the pawn to e5. So he's got a center pawn here. It is now Fischer's 6th move. He just carries out his plan of the fianchetto.
Fianchetto, yeah. Bishop to g2.
Okay. All right. So it's time to. Right now, Fischer has developed 3 pieces, and Huebner has only developed 1 piece. So it's time to try to catch up in development.
Yep.
So he plays the knight on g8 to e7. So that was his 6th move. Okay. Fischer's move. Move 7, what does he do?
Well, as soon as he's able, he castles.
All right, so he castles, and there's no reason why black can't do the same.
Right.
And that's what he did on move 7.
Right.
With the castles on move 7. Okay. All right, it is now Fischer's 8th move. How does he continue?
Yet another standard maneuver. He plays the rook on f1 to e1, so it's got room to move.
Right, exactly. Because it has no future staying on
It's
f1.
stuck. Doesn't want to stay stuck behind the f1.
Exactly, yeah. All right. All right. Now here is where Huebner decides he's going to advance the pawn, the d pawn to d4. So he advances that, which is good. Yeah.
So very much locks up the position.
Yeah, right.
Now.
Actually, this pawn now is not going is not going forward.
Right.
After that. All right, it is now Fischer's 9th move. What does he do?
Now he starts taking up some space on the queen side with a4.
Okay.
I think part of the thinking was he wants to put this knight here on c4, and he doesn't want it to be kicked.
He didn't want to be attacked with
yeah.
b5, attacking the knight. All right. So here is where Huebner advances this pawn he played on the first move.
Yeah.
He now actually advances it to c5. All right, which vacates the c6 square
Right.
for the knight to come into play
Yep.
on that square. So that's a good move,
Yep.
c5. All right, it's now Fischer's 10th move. What does he do?
Yeah. He does what we mentioned earlier. Puts the knight on c4. It's a good square, and it also opens up the diagonal for the bishop.
And we have a double attack on the e pawn.
Right.
We have 2
Right.
knights attacking
Two
the
knights.
pawn on e5.
Yep.
So that pawn has to be defended.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the most logical way is knight c6.
Yep.
I don't think actually Huebner wants to play the queen to c7 and have the queen do that. It is more logical to get this piece into
Yeah.
play
Yeah.
as fast as possible. So he plays knight c6, knight on b8. Not this knight going to c6, but this knight on b8 going to c6. All right. So it is now Fischer's 11th move. What does he do?
He decides to strike at the center with c3.
Right. He'd like to actually disrupt these pawns. I mean, exchange these pawns here. which I should have a stranglehold on the center here.
Yep.
So here is what he does. Huebner now plays the bishop to e6, attacking the knight. Okay. For one thing, what is Fischer going to do? It's his 12th move. Is there an exchange of some sort? There's all kinds of ways. That pawn that he moved to c3.
Right.
Did he move that pawn to c3 to exchange?
Sure enough. Plays c takes d4.
Okay. Now, there are at least 3 safe ways to take. Well, 3. Not with the queen naturally, because we are not going to take the
Right.
pawn on d4 with the queen, because the knight would win the queen. But black has to make a decision which way but he's going to take back. Is he going to take back with the c pawn or with the e pawn? 2 different ways.
Or, I guess,
Or
with
even the knight.
the knight, or is he going to take the knight?
No, but if he takes the knight with the knight, remember these 2 knights
Oh,
were
that's right.
attacked.
Yep.
Yeah, so the choices are really to what pawn.
What pawn, or whether
Yeah.
he's going to take the knight.
Oh, whether he take the knight. Yes, exactly. And what he did, yeah. In fact, he didn't even consider taking the pawn on d4.
Well, he might have. He might have. I'll bet he
I'm
considered
sure
it.
he looked at this. I'm sure Huebner looked at it and says, yeah, do I take the pawn on d4 or do I take the knight on c4, which he did.
Yeah.
Bishop, he decides he's going to eliminate bishop takes c4. Now he's giving a bishop for a knight. Yeah.
Yep.
And usually bishops are considered, a little bit better than a knight. It depends on the position.
Yeah, and having the bishop pair, as Fischer does, is considered a bit of an advantage.
Right, exactly. All right. So, of course, now
He's gonna
Fischer
recapture.
recaptures.
Yep.
All right. So here is actually where black has to decide, capturing this pawn on d4, which pawn is going to take it?
Right.
Do we take actually with the c pawn, c takes d4, or with the e pawn? And what Huebner decided to do was take the pawn with the on d4 with the e pawn.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Which actually gives more scope for that dark square bishop. Yeah. Although you told me that the computer analysis
Yeah.
favored actually in this position taking actually with the c pawn.
Right, and it took us a while to figure out why it would have that preference, and I'm not even recalling. Do you remember?
I know. The reason why?
Yeah.
By taking with the c pawn, this pawn is
Cannot stop from advancing. Yes,
It stops that e pawn from advancing.
Right.
So I think that was critical.
Right,
Not
so-
to allow that e
Right.
pawn ever to advance.
So he took this way.
He took this way. He took this way because he was looking, actually trying to give more scope for that bishop
Right.
along the long diagonal.
Right, but it did allow Fischer's next move, which is e5.
And he advanced it.
Right. Yep.
So in hindsight, the computer, I think, is right.
It said it was a slight preference to take
Slight
with the c
preference
pawn.
to take with the c pawn and keep the pawn on e4 block, preventing it from advancing like it did. So Fischer advances to e5. All right. So it's Huebner's move. He now plays queen to d7. He plays up here. He's vacating this square. He's vacating this square to allow this rook on a8 to move over and come into play here. So it'd be the last piece to develop, actually.
Right.
Because actually, remember, look at the pieces that Fischer has not developed yet.
Right.
The rook on a1, the bishop on c1. Of course, the queen hasn't moved either.
Right.
So right now, suddenly, this is the last piece for black to develop.
Yep.
But Fischer's behind, actually, in developing his other pieces.
Yep.
All right, so the queen is on d7. It's Fischer's move. How does he continue?
He actually does not develop, but he pushes.
He
the pawn
pushes
to
here.
h4.
Okay. So that must have come as a surprise to him, I think. He probably thought that maybe he's going to play the bishop out, maybe to d2 immediately. But no, he decided to play h4. Okay. All right, here is where Huebner advances the d pawn to d3. Now, remember, that's his passed pawn.
Yep.
So that's something that actually Fischer has to worry about. Yeah, he doesn't want to allow a pawn to reach the 8th rank here.
Right.
All right, so it is now Fischer's 16th move. He's got to catch up in development here. get other pieces into play here.
Yeah, so he does that, and at the same time blocks the pawn from advancing.
Oh, exactly. And of course, the reason why Huebner played Queen D7 is to allow this rook on A8 to move over to D8.
Yep.
So he is now developed all his pieces. It is now Fischer's 17th move. How does he make progress here? Yeah. Well,
what he does is he's going to play bishop to C3, although it was certainly possible to just continue
he could have done
the attack.
Right, exactly.
That was a completely reasonable thing to do.
And not concerned about actually losing that pawn, because this taking here on H5 would actually weaken this castle.
Right, so Huebner probably wouldn't have.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure if Fischer had played H5, I don't think Huebner would actually have taken the pawn on H5. So instead, Fischer played
bishop to C3.
Okay. All right. It is now Huebner's move 17. He now plays the knight on C6 to B4. Does he have a threat? Is there a threat now by playing the knight to B4?
Right.
This knight is now on B4.
Yeah.
Is he threatening now to sink into?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
He'd love to be able
He'd love to be able to come in there.
To have that knight just sit there.
And fork the two rooks.
Right, yeah. Sorry.
Winning one of them.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Winning the exchange. All right. All right. It is now Fischer's 18th move. How does he handle this? Does he? Well, first of all, does he give up? Is Fischer the type who would actually take that bishop takes knight and eliminate that? He's not going to do that.
Yeah.
He wants to hold on to that dark squared bishop. So on move 18, Fischer plays what? Remember, this is the square he has to worry about. He doesn't want to. He has to be concerned about this knight sinking into C2. So on move 18, Fischer now plays
knight to D4. And we should say that.
Yes.
You know, people might look at it and say, "Wait, isn't he just going to lose the knight?"
Yeah, I know.
But the point is, if Black were to capture, now the knight's undefended,
and the bishop would take the knight.
Could take back, and Black would have double pawns.
Double pawns, and then White actually would win the pawn on D3 because the pawn on D4 is blocking the defense of it. So anyways, that looks like a good play by Fischer.
So he is stopping him from
He's
coming
stopping
here.
After knight D4. All right. Now here is where I think some of the annotations I've seen about this game said this is where actually Huebner makes a mistake.
Yeah.
This is where he should have played. He should have played this knight on E7 to C6 there. They consider that a much better move than what he did. What he did seems logical.
Sure. Yeah.
He plays the rook on on F8 to E8. But this allows Fischer to do what? Fischer now is allowed to do on move 19.
Yeah, just pushes to E6.
He advances. Okay, so this is actually, I think Huebner underestimated the power of this move A6.
Yep.
All right, so now the pawn is attacking the queen.
Yep.
It's attacking the pawn on F7. So Huebner takes the pawn. F takes E6. He takes that pawn.
Yep.
And how does Fischer continue after F takes E6 on move 20?
So he captures back with the knight. Now things are getting kind of complicated here because now by doing that, he's allowing this knight to come in forward.
Yes.
But at the same time, he's also attacking the rook on D8.
Exactly. So, yes, right. So how is he gonna handle this? So with the knight on E6, well, also we have this knight has a double attack on this bishop. Also, one thing. Just so what the Huebner decides, he's going to play bishop takes C3. Now we have the bishop attacking the rook on E1.
Right.
And Fischer takes back. B takes C3.
Yep.
Okay. All right. But Huebner now can still, and he does it, go in and forks, with knight C2, forks the two rooks.
Yep.
So Again, Fischer's attacking the rook on d8, but
Right.
also Huebner is attacking 2 rooks.
Both rooks.
With the knight on c2. All right. It is now Fischer's move on move 23.
Move 22.
I'm sorry, 20. I'm sorry, 22.
Yep.
Oh yeah, he takes the rook, right?
Takes the rook on d8.
Right. And Huebner just recaptures that knight with the rook on d8. Rook takes d8
Yep.
is his move. All right. All right, it's now Fischer's move. He realizes there are two rooks under attack, so he might as well.
You can't save both.
He can't save both, so instead, why waste? There's no need to move any one of them. Just let them stay where they are.
Right. He also wants, I think partially he wants to prevent this pawn from going any further. It's got the rook and the queen behind it.
Yes, yeah.
So he plays queen to d2. That stops the pawn.
That stops the advance of the pawn. All right. So now Huebner is going to take one of those rooks.
Yeah.
Now, what rook is the proper rook to take? It certainly is not this rook, because you don't want to activate this rook.
Activate this rook, right.
So the proper rook to take is knight takes on a1.
In the corner, right.
Right, in the corner.
Yeah.
And of course.
So to recapture now, Fischer has to put his rook in the corner.
Right, in the corner. Okay. So it is now Huebner's move. Okay, so I'm trying to find. Okay. Well, all right. Now we're in the middle game here.
Yep.
And Huebner says, okay, it's time to bring this king into play here.
Yep.
King g7. He moves it up. King g7 is his move. All right. So what does Fischer do now on move 25?
He wants to get the rook back into the action.
He still wants to get back on this open file.
So right back where it was.
Back where it was, yep. All right. Now, Huebner realizes he's got to redeploy. He has to redeploy. This poor knight can't really. He says, okay, he has an idea where he's going to redeploy this by playing the knight back to g8, which actually controls this e7 square for one thing.
Right.
Doesn't allow any hanky-panky there. All right, knight g8 was what he played. It is now Fischer's 26th move. What does he do?
So centralizes the bishop with bishop to d5.
By doing that, a very good move. Wow, it looks like, for example, with a block, that bishop now is a blocker.
Right.
It looks like this pawn now is now ripe for taking.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So after bishop d5, well, there's no way to save that pawn. So, but of course, by doing this, bishop d5, Fischer says, wait a minute. All right, you're going to get that on d3, but I'm going to get this a pawn on a4. So queen takes a4. So here is where Huebner responds with queen takes a4, takes that. Okay. And it's now, and of course, Fischer
just grabs the pawn on d3. Yep.
All right. So how was material here? We have actually 5 pawns on each side, but of course these pawns are doubled on the c file. All right. So after queen takes d3, so Huebner has probably thought long on his next move. Said, how am I going to make progress here? How am I going to make I got a pass pawn here. This a pawn is a potential pass pawn. It is an a pass pawn, but is it going anywhere? He said, I'd like to get rid of that rook. I'd like to actually get at least this rook off the board. So he plays rook e8, and that's what Huebner plays on move 27. All right. It is now Fischer's move, move 28. Now, does he exchange rooks, or does he now move the rook to avoid exchanging rooks? I'm sure he thought about this. I don't know how long he thought about this, but I'm sure he considered moving the rook. But where can you actually move the rook where it has any
I guess if you're going to move the rook, you would put it somewhere on this file still, where you could recapture. So like here or here where it could be recaptured.
Right. But, so he decided, he probably figured, he looked at probably all kinds of other possibilities. But in the end, he captured the rook.
Yeah.
Rook takes e8. So he decides to exchange rooks. And of course, the queen is going to recapture by queen takes e8. All right. So we have rooks off the board. So we're now down to queen and pawns versus queen bishop and pawns versus queen knight and pawns. Yeah. Okay. Again, we have the pass pawn here.
Right. But.
Oh, however, look at.
Right.
Oh, but
Next
now,
move.
okay, so now Fischer actually wins the pawn here.
Yep.
He's got a pawn ahead here.
Pawn ahead, but.
Yeah.
But this one holds these two doubled ones, so it's not real significant.
All right. So here is where, after Fischer wins the pawn on b7, that, okay, Huebner plays the knight to f6. Yep. He plays here. Okay. All right. How does Fischer continue now after knight f6? Does he actually attack an undefended pawn?
Yeah, so queen to d6.
Ooh.
Attacking that pawn.
So he now is attacking the pawn on c5.
Yep.
Okay. Now, what does Fischer do here? Can he defend this? Can he defend this pawn? I mean, he could actually. In fact, would this be a mistake to go over here and try to defend here? He could try this.
Could try it, sure.
But I don't think he probably could look at this and rejected this. He didn't play this.
Yeah.
Instead, what he did instead is he went and he said, okay, I'll go here and offer. In fact, this is now as a threat. The queen now is threatening the bishop here.
Right.
But he's offering actually the exchange of queens.
Trade, yeah.
Okay, trade. All right, so after queen d7, which he played, people did, what did Fischer do in response to queen d7?
So
did he exchange queens?
So rather than exchange,
No.
plays queen to a6, attacking the pawn on a7.
He said, wait a minute, I could defend my bishop on b7, but at the same time, I can win this pawn on a7.
Right.
Okay, so that's what he did. He played queen a6. All right, so here is where Huebner must have thought long and hard on this one. He plays the queen on d7 and plays it to f7. That's what he did. Mm-hmm. Okay, he said, wait a minute. If you take this pawn, your queen is taken off the defense of this pawn on c4. All right.
Right.
So this is actually where I think Fischer makes it an accurate move.
Yeah.
Yeah. In this position, actually, can we show this actually with a diagram with to our viewers? If they were to if they could see what move actually is good to play here,
we could show it on the board, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. You see it on the board here.
At the board, yeah.
Okay.
So the thing that's probably most important here is to stop this knight from coming in here or here.
Yes.
To have a double attack on this and threaten checkmate.
So what can you do to that?
So he could have simply pulled the bishop back to f3, protecting those squares.
Yes, yeah.
And at this point, the game would have gone on. Fischer would probably say have a small advantage.
I think they would evaluate this as advantage for Fischer after the advance.
And it would have been, a long end game, but Fischer probably would have had the edge.
Right. But instead he captured the pawn on a7. Queen takes a7 is what he did. Okay. And of course, this allows Huebner now to play knight to e4.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute. Now, there are some beginners who would look at this and say, wait a minute, this bishop, why can't this bishop take the knight on e4?
Right.
Can't do it.
Right.
Because this bishop is pinned. If this bishop were to take that knight on e4, the black would win the queen.
Right.
So that bishop cannot move because it would lose the queen. All right.
So there's a couple threats. So there's the threat of this, first of all.
And there's a threat of mate in 2 here.
Yeah.
If that queen takes the pawn on f2 with check, the king only has one square, h1, and then knight takes the pawn on g, and it's mate.
It's going to be mate.
So black in this position is now threatening checkmate in 2 moves.
But black is also threatening to go here, attacking the bishop a second time.
Yes, right, exactly, yes. So, but the major threat is actually this attack on the pawn on f2. All right. So there is only one move to defend here, defensive move to hold this position.
So f3.
And f3 is actually what Fischer played, f3. Yeah. Okay. So, but as you pointed out, Now this knight can go to d6, knight d6, and look at this. We actually have a double attack on the bishop. The bishop cannot move.
So the bishop is lost.
The bishop is lost.
Yep.
Huebner is now going to win that bishop on b7 because of this maneuver.
So we'd have to sort of guess that Fischer missed.
He missed bishop.
The fact that the knight coming here was going to threaten checkmate and threaten to come here.
So he missed that move.
He probably missed it.
He missed the only defensive move, the best move in the position was playing the bishop back to f3, and which would have preserved his edge in the game. So this is where he loses his advantage, and now he's going to lose this knight. A bishop, He'll lose the bishop.
So Fischer can't save it, so he takes.
He says,
pawn on
"Okay,
c5.
I'm losing my bishop," which allows now Huebner to take the bishop. Knight takes b7, attacks the queen. Now, positionally, what Fischer has for the lost piece, he's got 3 pawns.
3 extra pawns.
3 extra pawns, which is usually the equivalent of a knight, 3 pawns. And again, he's got these double pawns here. So it is now Fischer's move. His queen is under attack. He's got to move the queen. Where is he going to move that queen?
So he plays it to d4, checking the king.
Okay. So Huebner doesn't want to offer an exchange of queens by blocking here. He just moves the king back. So he plays king back to g8. Okay. All right. It's now Fischer's move. How does he continue after king g8?
So one thing that's going on is this pawn is undefended.
Oh, wow.
So the queen could just grab it.
Exactly. So he doesn't want to allow that pawn to be lost.
All right. So he plays king f2.
All right. Okay. All right. So king f2 is what he played. Here is where Huebner plays queen e7. Goes here. Okay. Because he's going to be able to, with this queen, be able to bring this knight back into play by defending it from this position, e7. Okay, so queen is on e7. It is now Fischer's 37th move, is it?
Yep. So he checks black again.
Another check. Queen d5 check. Okay. So what Huebner does is just advance, bring the king over to f8. King f8. All right. It is now Fischer's move here. Move of 38, is it? Yes. All right. So Fischer realizes, wait a minute, I've got to, even though I have 3 against 2, I want to eliminate at least one of these pawns on the king side. So on move 38, he advances to h5. Okay. All right. So Huebner has not much of a choice. I mean, he could advance the pawn, but that could be dangerous. Advancing the pawn here, allowing this pawn to even move further down to h6. So he said, okay, I'm just going to take that pawn on h5. G takes h5 is what Huebner played here. And Fischer responded with?
Capturing back. Queen takes h5.
Queen takes h5. Okay. All right. Here is where Huebner now plays knight to c5. Does he now have a threat? Is there a threat with that knight on c5 now? Is there a threat of coming down here with d3 check, which could present some problems here, because that would force the king to move, and the queen could possibly come down and actually check again, and present big problems for white. So I'm sure Fischer does not want that knight to come on the d3 square and check. So how does he respond to this knight move to c5?
So queen d5.
Queen d5 on move 40. Okay, so he goes there. All right. So here is where, after queen d5, Huebner plays king g7. Do I have that right?
Yep.
All right. King g7. All right. All right. Fischer's move, what does he do?
He just
on move 41.
Checks him again.
Checks him again. Another check. Well, Huebner moves the king to f7. All right. Moves to f7. Fischer, how does he continue?
So he plays queen to d5 check again. So he's sort of, so it's almost like he's offering a draw. He's basically
this repetition,
saying, do you want to just repeat the position?
Right, exactly. So after the check, the king has to move again. He can't. So he brings the king actually to G7 back
Right.
here.
I think he felt like, yeah, he's got nothing better than
Nothing better. Okay.
Yep.
Because remember, this queen is protecting this, right?
Yep.
Yep. All right. So it's Fischer's move again after the king on
So one
G7.
more time.
One more time. A check
Checks
there.
it again.
And Huebner says, okay, I'll just go back where I came from. King F7 here.
So it's essentially agreeing to a draw because
Right.
because now Fischer's next move is to repeat the position for the third time, which is a draw.
Yes, it is. Under the rules of chess, once a position, one makes a claim. Now, for example, the way it is properly done, in order to claim a draw on a threefold repetition of the position.
We'll pull this back.
Okay, we'll put it back.
Yeah.
The proper way to make a legitimate claim of a three-fold repetition is you cannot make the move on the board.
Right.
You must actually summon. You must.
Right, so
you have the right. You have the right to stop the clock.
Yeah.
Summon the director, the arbiter.
Yeah.
And say, with this move, you indicate to the arbiter, with this move, I'm going to bring about the position for the third time,
Right.
claiming a draw.
Right.
But you can never make the move on the board without notifying the director.
I think it's rather odd, honestly.
Yeah. But I've been in tournaments where players have done it improperly.
Right.
They made the move.
Right. Because it seems to be the natural thing, right? You make the move and say, this is the third time.
And then you make the no, you can't do it that way.
Yeah.
You have to announce to the director that you're going to, with this move you're going to play, you're going to bring about the position.
But in general, right, both players know that this is a draw, so typically it's not an issue, right? It's like both players are repeating the position.
Yes.
They've essentially, without actually agreeing to draw.
But it's painful. I've been in enough tournaments as a director and also as a player watching other games where this has happened, where a claim has been denied because it was improperly claimed. Yeah. So, but that's something to learn. I mean, I'm sure there are players out watching our program who were not aware of what that rule is.
It doesn't happen that often, so it's something that a lot of players aren't aware of.
Right.
And like you say, the inclination is simply to make the move and say, this is the third time, it's a draw.
But there are players that are watching this program that are not even aware of this claim of a draw by a three-fold repetition. Yeah. So it's something to know. And learn, and again, it does come up occasionally in games.
And it is a tricky thing because I've had a claim made against me, and then the director has to go and start playing over the game.
Has to play over the game, yes, right. Take the score sheet, ask for your score sheet, and play over the game.
Start playing to see if it's a three-fold repetition.
Exactly. All right, okay. So I hope that actually that our Chess Chat fans enjoyed the game we presented. We're sad. The chess world mourns the passing of Robert Huebner, again, one of the top players in the world in the latter half of the 20th century. And again, he died tragically at the age of 76. He died of stomach complications. It was complication from stomach cancer that he died of. But he was a scholar, a classical scholar, and again, mastered 8 languages and deciphered papyrus. I mean, that was his life's work, is actually taking papyrus and deciphering it. I mean, and that he was truly a unique individual in the world of chess. And again, it was a great hope for Germany to have him be a contender in a world championship match. It never came to fruition because he tragically was a loner. Actually, this article that I cut out 40 years ago said he was a lone wolf. He was a very private individual who kept himself, didn't watch TV. I'm sure didn't watch TV, listen to radio, read news, whatever. It's sad. So we hope that our Chess Chat viewers enjoyed our paying homage to Robert Huebner. And we promise our viewers a good program next time on the 201st episode.